appreciate all he does for the Lord's church. As far as our schedule today, so starting now till 10:15 is our topic 2 important decisions. Then 10:30 to 11:15 is Bible-based decisions. And then we'll break for lunch. It's scheduled for 11:30 to 1, which is a long time for a lunch. But so if everybody's ready to go before then, we'll go ahead and just get started. We'll just kind of play that by ear. But we'll have plenty of time there. And then coming back at 1, the next session will be Kingdom-Seeking Decisions. And then at 2 o'clock, Thought-Purifying Decisions. So hopefully you've read his book. I think most everybody here has. And, it's been beneficial for me. So I know the seminar will be as well. Just a little bit more about, well, one thing I do want to make mention, he may mention it too, but print off some sheets here for you to follow along. So some fill in the blank, so for you to take home and keep with you. Appreciate him doing that. Bring that to us. Just a little bit more about Tim, then we'll turn it over to Chris will lead us in a song, and Ernie will lead us in prayer, and we'll turn it over to Tim. He is a graduate of Oklahoma Christian University. He graduated in 1993 with a degree in English education and obtained his master's degree in ministry in 1998. He served as a preacher/youth minister for the Mount Vernon Church of Christ in Mount Vernon, Missouri for 8 years before moving to Oklahoma City to begin his work with the North MacArthur congregation in 2004. He's recently written a book entitled, which we're here today, The Domino Effect. He and his wife, Tommy, they have 2 daughters, Macy and Calvin, and 1 son, Brian. So, again, we'll turn it over to Chris.
Number 415. 415. We'll sing all 3 verses. Let's sing together. Each step I take, my Savior goes before me, and with His loving hand He leads the way. And with each breath I whisper, I adore Thee. Oh, what joy to walk with Him each day. Each step I take, I know that He will guide me to higher ground. He ever leads me on until someday the last step will be taken. Each step I take just leads me closer home. At times I feel my faith begin to waver when up I see a chasm wide. Then I turn and look up to my Savior. I am strong when He is by my side. Each step I take, I know that He will guide me to higher ground. He ever leads me on until someday the last step will be taken. Each step I take just leads me closer home. I trust in God no matter come what may, for life eternal is in His hand. He holds the key that opens up the way that will lead me to the promised land. Each step I take, I know that He will guide me to higher ground. He ever leads me on until someday the last step will be taken. Each step I take just leads me closer home.
Pray together. Gracious Father, we humbly and sincerely again approach your throne. Thanking you for our very lives. Thank you for each blessing you give us. We're thankful, Father, that you allowed us to wake this morning to the right day, but also that we could meet here as a family today to study your word. We ask your blessings upon Tim as he's worked in the vineyard many, many years and has written a book in which we're going to study today. We pray, Father, that you'll bless him and watch over him as he directs our minds and thoughts these next few hours this morning. We're thankful for his work and we're thankful for his congregation, and we ask you to bless him, bless the congregation, bless his family. Bless the young people that are downtown this morning. Hopefully they'll have a good, uplifting day for you. Father, as we go through this service, we pray that our hearts and minds will be in this, here in this place, ready to listen, ready to partake, and ready to carry home that which will make us better children. Thank you so much for the church. Thank you so much for Jesus. And thank you so much again for this morning. It's in Christ's name we pray. Amen.
All righty. I'm very happy to be in Bridge Creek. Glad to be with you. Thankful for the opportunity to talk about changing our lives one decision at a time. Many of you, from what I understand, already have a copy of the book, read the book. If you have, you probably know the way my story, the way I became a Christian, the way that story began. My father, I think he was a junior in high school. He dropped out of high school. He enlisted with the Air Force. He was stationed in Roswell, New Mexico. We were not, our family does not have a, strong religious background. He was not a Christian. He met a member of the church who taught him, baptized him. He came home to Pennsylvania. I was asking you, I think I knew your football loyalties from Facebook there. Well, I grew up in Pennsylvania, Penn State country up there. Okay, we didn't lose anybody in the audience yet, I don't think, but the church in that part of the country is not very strong. My dad wasn't very strong. He was a new Christian, didn't have very deep roots in his faith, and he fell away and was out of the church for over 20 years. Okay? And I remember he was a salesman for a little paper called The Shopper. It was all advertising. That's not a newspaper. It was just, all advertising. And he was traveling around kind of his area that he covered. 4th and Arch Street, Church of Christ, Sunbury, Pennsylvania. He walked into that building and was looking at some tracts, the tract rack. He was going to send his kids to church. He knew some things he wanted us to know. He wasn't necessarily going to make any changes in his life. And the preacher there, his name was Lon Mahundro, said, it's not going to make any difference for you to send your kids to church. You know where you're supposed to be. You need to bring your kids to church. And I mean, it was like a flipping of a light switch. It was weird for us because we were not church-going people. And I remember we went to VBS Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We went to a church picnic on Sunday or Saturday. We were in church Sunday morning. We thought my dad had gone crazy. It was just really weird. And all of the things that used to be a big part of our lives. My dad didn't go to parties. He hosted parties. I literally remember going with him to the beer distributor, loading a keg into the back of the car, and cases of it. We knew the people at the beer distributor. I'm not making this up. We got a leather football from them one year for Christmas, me and my 2 brothers. We knew them. And all of those people slowly disappeared from our home and from our lives. And we started going to church all the time. My dad was restored. My mother was baptized. Does anybody here remember Jewel Miller, the film strips? It's a DVD, and you kind of go back, and it was, VHS, and you go back, and it's boom. You all remember that? It would bing, and you'd advance. How old? When you said I've been preaching for many, many years, I thought, okay, in that prayer, I thought, I guess it's over 21, And, I mean, literally, they brought in a film projector and the screen and a cassette player and showed, my mother then was baptized, my brothers, I've got 2 older brothers, and all of us were converted. When I was writing this for Gospel Advocate, I didn't name the book. They saw a phrase in that story where I said that it was like the falling of the first domino. I had no idea that's what they were going to call the book. It was just in my mind, it set off a chain reaction. That one choice that my dad made, it changed my life forever. Had he not done that, had he not had the courage really and humility to go back to the Lord, back to the church, I may never have heard the gospel. Then I come out here to Oklahoma Christian, and I told you, Donnie, I told you I was driving over to Minco as a student to preach, and Bob and Ramona Scott have a granddaughter. He introduced her as the prettiest girl in Minco. I'm not mad at all, and I met her and married her. What a great life. None of it happens. None of it happens. If my dad doesn't make that decision, you can change your life. You're writing a life story. You're the author of it. And you can determine, you're writing it one day at a time, one decision at a time. If you don't like the way it's going, why don't you write a different story? Why don't you create a different ending? You say, well, I don't know if I can do it. Yes, you can. That's the real thrill that God has given us free for choice. You can be someone different, someone better. We're looking at two choices this morning, and really we're going to spend a lot of time on this first one. If you think about God coming to Solomon, okay, at Gibeon the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night and said, ask, what shall I give you? Can you imagine God coming to you? Anything you want. And you know what lesser men would ask for, military might or fame or wealth or the lives of their enemies. He doesn't ask for any of those things. You know what he asked for. Therefore, give your servant an understanding heart to judge your people. Here it is, that I may discern between good and evil. For who is able to judge this great people of yours? I'm going to tell you, there's a real... If you're taking notes, we have the first major decision. You got to choose good or evil. You said, well, you came down here from Oklahoma City to tell us that. You got to choose good over evil. Do you know how many people aren't doing that? Do you know how many people don't even know that you can do that? They don't even know in the world that we're living in right now that there's a difference between those two things. The only thing that this tolerant culture won't tolerate is our perceived intolerance. This is offensive to people. Choose good over evil. Look, we're going to spend most of our time in this section talking about why that first decision is so hard. There are 5 things that make this choice. Listen, I've got 3 kids. My oldest is 17. She's got a sister that just turned 15, little brother that's 11. They're going to have a hard time doing this because we live in a culture that has embraced moral relativism. Here's what that means. It means that truth varies. So it's a mindset, it's a philosophy that says truth varies from person to person, from place to place, and from time to time. It's always, you're aiming at a constantly moving target. What's right for me isn't right for you. What's right here may not be right someplace else. Something that was wrong 30 years ago, just think how the world has changed. I just think over 20 years ago when I was a student at Oklahoma Christian, how much the world has changed in those past 20 to 25 years. And so, and now listen, when you were growing up, they talked about these moral issues, and it was wrong then, but it's not wrong today. That may be wrong here, but it's not wrong there. Well, that's right for you, but that's not right for me. It reminds me of a story. There was a university president. The groundskeeper was all upset. He said, the kids here at the university are walking across the grass. They're killing the grass. And they're not using the sidewalks. And the president, this was his solution, they're literally making trails in the grass. He said, well, listen, here's what we're going to do. Just watch where they're walking and build the sidewalks there. Do you know what we're doing morally? We're not saying, here's right, here's wrong. we're saying, well, look, just watch where everybody's walking. Where are they walking? And then build the sidewalk there. We just watch what everybody's doing and we just call that right. Why? Well, because that's what everybody's doing. That's where they're walking. Listen, this one chapter book, Jude, and you got the passage here, verse 3. He wants to write about salvation. He finds it necessary to write about, contending earnestly for the faith. But notice, once for all. Once for all, to look at this sentence. The truth that God has given us has been delivered once for all people, once for all time, once for all places. You don't have God's truth for this specific group here, Bridge Creek, Oklahoma. This is God's truth. And I think Oprah may be one that coined this phrase, find your truth. What does that mean? Listen, when he talks about faith, by the way, you notice the word the definite article there. This is not objective faith. Subjective faith. This is objective, knowable. It's not going to change. It's not my faith, your faith, well, my granny's faith. No. It's the system of Christian teaching. Once for all. It's not going to vary. It's not going to change. It's the same yesterday, today, forever. Psalm 119 and verse 89 talks about how God's word is forever settled in heaven. The point I'm making in saying all of this stuff, you say, well, listen, you want to change your life, you got to do the right thing. You can't do the wrong thing over and over again. But the world today says you can't know the difference. This idea there's no objective truth. You can. Charles Hodge. You ever read after Charles Hodge? I don't know if any of you. He used to be the back page editor for Gospel Advocate. He talked about the professor who said you have to be an idiot to believe in absolute truth. And the student said, "Are you sure about that?" He said, "Absolutely." Think about it. Now, listen. The only thing you can know is that you can't know anything for sure. And in that culture, as Christians, we're trying to tell young people you have to discern good from evil and right from wrong. Here's the second challenge. It's difficult to do this because we have consistently replaced one for the other. I think most of you will recognize that passage from Isaiah, okay? Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light, light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet, sweet for bitter. I think there's a strong effort to normalize, to rationalize, okay, what do they call it? Alternative lifestyles. Whether we're talking about homosexuality, or now this strong push towards transgender lifestyle. It used to be that we could say of some of these things, we know from Romans chapter 1 what the Bible says about sexual purity, about immorality. And you would say, well, that lifestyle is wrong. You know what was amazing? For you to believe that, and I hope you believe what the Bible says about that, but for you to believe that in this culture makes you a villain. That makes you bad. But for people to live a lifestyle that God says will literally keep them out of heaven, well, they'll win a courage award for that. Literally. I mean, I'm not making that up. They'll be recognized on television for pressing the envelope, for setting the trend, for having the courage to be who they are. What have we done? We've celebrated sin. We've called evil good. We've called good evil. If you look at how you're portrayed as a Christian in the media, you're not the good people. We're the bad people. Well, what makes us bad? Well, we're bad because we think that people shouldn't sin. Well, who are you to say? Well, there you go. We just lost our standard. We already talked about that. Moral relativism. You can't tell me what's right and what's wrong. And if you think you know what's right and you think that what I'm doing is wrong, then you're a bad person. If you think I'm kidding, just watch the news. It's all over the news. Why is it so hard to change our lives? Well, because we live in an anything-goes society. And the only thing that won't go is telling somebody else that they shouldn't be doing what kind of thrills their soul. That makes it really hard, especially for young people. It makes it, because I think, as I look out over, this group that's gathered here, most of us were raised to know the difference, to respect the difference, to understand there's a right, you got to do it, and there's a wrong. And if you do wrong, at least you knew it was wrong, and you repent. You feel sorry for it. Another thing I think that really makes this difficult, okay, is that some of God's people have adopted what I'm going to call a defeatist attitude. And all I mean by that is that there are some Christians who have failed so many times in the past that they don't really think it's possible not to fail. That they don't think it's possible to resist temptation. They've concluded, listen, temptation, irresistible. Sin, it's inevitable. And so when they're tempted, they're kind of resigned to the idea that, listen, fill in the blank for your personal struggle, but if I'm tempted, I have to get drunk, I have to get high, I have to go online, look at some inappropriate images, can't resist the temptation, pass along a little gossip or to covet or to lose my temper. The idea is that when I say defeatist attitude, is that my out-of-control behavior, I mean, that's what it is. It's just out of my control. It's just the way I am. I can't help it. It makes it hard to choose good over evil when you buy into the idea that you're powerless. That no matter how much you want to change, you can't change. That failure is a foregone conclusion. But I'm going to tell you, and you guys know, you know this passage, you know this truth, but we need to be reminded of it. You don't have to fail. In fact, God says in 1 Corinthians 10 and verse 13, no temptation deceives you except that which is common to man. And I think that in itself, a lot of times, people think whatever they tend to struggle with, nobody else struggles the way they do. That's not true. Whatever your struggle is this morning, there are other people who have experienced the exact same thing you're going through. You're not alone. You're not the only one who's ever felt the way you feel, that unbearable pressure to give in to whatever it is. And for different people, that varies. The struggles I have may not be the struggles that somebody else endures. But the idea that you're the only one, that's not true. It's common to me. God is faithful. He'll not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. When you're tempted, He'll also provide a way out, listen, so that you can. So I just can't. I can't. You know, I've been going against this for years now, and every time I'm defeated. I can't win. That's not what the text says. That's God talking to us. God says, you can stand up unto me. Whenever I've sinned, it's not because I haven't been able to overcome temptation. With every temptation, God's provided a way of escape. You don't have to take God's way out. Here's what we have to do. What we have to do is, when we don't take God's way out, we have to admit that that was our choice not to. There's a guy that North MacArthur. He came in his first Sunday. I think it was the very first Sunday he was visiting from another congregation in the city, and he eventually identified, he's a Christian who moved his membership from another congregation in North MacArthur. The very first Sunday that he walked in, he said, "Do you all have a recovery program?" I said, "We don't." "What would it take for us to have a recovery program for alcoholics and addicts?" He said, "Well, all you need is a room and a pot of coffee." Well, I think we might do it. I had no idea how many people in our family. There are 800 on the roll up there. Okay? I didn't know we had alcoholics. He said, "Well, you do. I see them in AA all the time." He didn't tell me who they were. That would have been. But he said, "Yeah, you got your members right here. I see them in our meetings." This is a guy that was arrested 7 times for driving under the influence. He was nearly going to lose his business, his marriage. A judge says, "I'm sending you court order. You need to go to Alcoholics Anonymous." He came in the other day. He pulls a coin. When I wrote the book, it was 39. Pulls a coin out of his pocket. It's a metal coin inscribed with a 43. He's been waking up every day for the past 43 years. Saying no. Somebody goes, "Well, now, that guy," no, that guy is where some people are right now. He was not saying no. He was saying yes, to the point of being an alcoholic, to the point of being arrested, to the point of spending time in jail, nearly losing his marriage and his business. And what changed? He started making different decisions. He started saying no to a thing he'd said yes to over and over. He said, "Well, 43 years now, is he really an alcoholic?" Ask him, he'll tell you. He's not recovered. He's in recovery. He's got to make the decision every single day. Today, just like he has yesterday and the 43 years before, he has to say no. This idea that I'm a victim and I can't help it. I'm a believer in the truth that what has been done can be done. Well, what does that mean? Well, that guy did it. Well, you can't go from that to, if he did it, well, then it's doable. If it has happened, it can happen. If God in his life could deliver him, then God in your life can deliver you. And it's not just alcohol or drugs, it's any sinful behavior that we've allowed to become an ingrained behavior. We can change. I think one of the big problems is we are experts in doing that right there. We shift the blame instead of accepting responsibility. You'll recognize all of this. Let's just go through these real quickly. When Adam and Eve sinned, who's he blamed? Kind of convenient to have a woman nearby, right? This woman! By the way, he's blaming God. You gave her to me. The woman that you gave me? Well, thanks a lot, God. You don't think people blame God right now? You don't think people say, well, God made me this way? You don't think they blame other people? Or the devil? Well, the devil made me do it. It's just so funny how I'm along for the ride, but then when it comes time for accountability, who, me? Well, not God. You made me this way. You put these people around me. It's the devil's fault. Teflon, right? Nothing sticks. Not me. It's not my fault that I'm this way. It couldn't possibly be my responsibility. This is interesting because when Israel sins, they make the golden image. Don't let your anger become hot. You know the people. Aaron's like telling his brother, it's not me. I was at Oklahoma Christian working their summer basketball camps. I was in charge of housing, and this kid lived with a mattress on fire. And as we were leaving up to Coach Hayes' office, 4 or 5 kids, I look back, 4 or 5 kids all dropped back with the other counselor going. They're pointing at me. They're not going home. They're like, it was him. Well, we do that all the time. It's not my fault. It's his fault, her fault. And don't blame my parents, you know. I wrote about in the book, 2 sons of an alcoholic. One grows up to become an alcoholic. What's he say? I never had a chance. My dad was an alcoholic. What would you expect? The other one grows up and never takes a drink. Why? He says, well, my dad was an alcoholic. One of them uses it as the motivation to change. The other one uses it as an excuse to justify. Which one am I? What am I going to do? And then along comes David, and it has to be refreshing in Psalm 51 for God to hear this. Against you, you only have I sinned. So he's a man after God's own heart. Means he's perfect. No, he's not. I mean, you know what he did. Well, what it means is he accepts responsibility and accountability. He humbles himself. He acknowledges the wrong. He gives God more. He leans on God. He comes to. How refreshing must that be for God? When we stop blaming everybody else and we take responsibility for the sin that is in our lives. I remember this guy. I was really a young preacher, and I was sitting in a car with this guy. We'd gone to lunch, and he said, Tim, I just want you to know I'm coming forward on Sunday. I wanted to give you a heads up. I've been having an affair. Well, that kind of rocked my world a little bit. This is one of the families he was in the church pretty strong. This guy's coming forward on a Sunday. He stood in front of the congregation. He made 3 statements. I've sinned against my God. I've sinned against my wife. And I've sinned against my family. What he did is wrong. It's bad. Listen, it hurt everybody. But he owned it. In front of the whole church, he admitted it. It was a long, painful journey. I was just back there for the 70th homecoming anniversary. He and his wife are still together. It was a bumpy road to get there. She moved out for a while. She moved back. She forgave him. He repented. The reason that this personal accountability is so important, you can't make significant changes in your life, in your character, in your personality, until you admit to yourself that you're personally responsible. You are personally responsible for the message that made you life. But when you take ownership of poor decisions, stop shifting the blame, denying the truth, you can begin that difficult process of improving your character and making different and better decisions. You can change your life. Again, one day at a time, one decision at a time. It doesn't happen though if you're unwilling to take complete ownership of the mistake you made in the past. I think here's something that we would say. How can you do this in a culture where, I mean, it's so ungodly. My son is aware, he's 11 years old. In the last couple of weeks, you go to church, you get shot at church. You go to a concert, you get shot at a concert. Where do you go in the world where you're safe? Where do you go in the world where evil can't get to you? And somebody says, well, in a culture like that, you just don't even have a chance. You remember this guy, Noah? He was a just man, perfect. One translation, blameless in his generation. Well, I want you to remember what the Bible says about his generation. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, that every intent of the thoughts of his heart, only evil continually. The Lord was sorry that he made man on the earth and grieved his heart. We're going to come back to that phrase later when we talk about our thought life, but only evil all the time. What do you think about evil? What are you thinking about now? Evil. Evil all the time. That's all they thought about. All the time. What else does it say? The earth was filled with violence. All flesh had corrupted their way on earth. You have corruption. You have immorality. You have violence. And yet here was a man living in the midst of all of that who was blameless before the Lord. You can live in that kind of a culture. You can rise above the culture. You can live apart from the standard of the culture. Listen, doing the right thing, it's not easy. But it's always right. God doesn't want us to do the easy thing because it's easy. That's what a lot of people do. He wants us to do the right thing even when it's difficult, even when it's demanding. We've got about 5 minutes left. Let me just tell you the second prayer that we're looking at. I like Philippians. Paul didn't just pray for people. He tells them what he's praying. And this translation is a little different than the one I tend to quote from. But this is my prayer, that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight, that you may be able to discern what is best. This has kind of approved the things that are excellent. And so the second choice, and much briefer on this, we'll go through it pretty quickly. You got to choose excellence over mediocrity. Or if you want to jot this thought down, the best over the merely good enough. And if you really want to start growing in your life with God, you got to kind of raise the bar, so to speak. I think a lot of Christians are just kind of trying to get by. What's the least God wants from me? Instead of what's the best I can give to God. But we have a song, Rise Up, O Men of God, have done with lesser things. Give heart and soul and mind and strength to serve the King of Kings. I've always thought it was interesting. Have done with lesser things. You didn't say have done with sinful things. Obviously, we get to be done with sinful things. But sometimes it's the lesser things. The things that say, well, is it wrong? People all the time ask preachers, do you think it's wrong? By the way, it doesn't matter what I think. You taking notes still? It doesn't matter what I think. What does God's Word say? But a lot of times people say, is it wrong? Is this wrong? We're not talking all the time about what's wrong. Is this best? Think about your relationship with your husband or your wife. Do you really want to be in a relationship where they're saying, well, this isn't best, but can I get by with this? Can I just kind of get squeak by on this? The kingdom, we're going to talk about seeking first the kingdom as we continue this morning. Think what it would mean to the kingdom. If in all of these various areas of life we were saying to God, I want you to have my best. Not just what's left, kind of the leftovers. It really gave him the best of who we are. When I preached this the first time, a girl comes into my office. I was really kind of surprised by this. As a preacher, I mean, I don't get a lot of this where people say that lesson, I'm making a major life decision based on that lesson. She get engaged. She comes to my office and says, you know that good over evil lesson and then the best over the merely good enough? She said, I really started thinking about this guy I'm getting ready to marry, and he is not God's best for my life. And she called off her engagement. My first thought was, I hope she didn't tell him that was my sermon that gave her that idea. But honestly, a couple years later, she met this great guy. I did their premarital counseling. I did their wedding. They've been married for several years, had 2 kids, one on the way. I think she would tell you it was better by far. To kind of extricate herself from that engagement, to be patient, to wait for what she believed was God's best for her life. She doesn't regret that. Just think how your life could be better, how it could be different. If you consistently chose right over wrong, God's best over the merely good enough. Don't settle for good enough. That's good enough. When something better is possible. We have just a second, and I want to tell you this story. Think about this line right here. Punctuation mark versus question mark. There's a guy who several years ago now, he's got cancer, he's in the hospital, he's dying. Eventually he'll go home, he's on hospice. And I go and I talk with Ed, and I said, is there anything you want to talk about? I'm not a medical professional, I'm not there to talk about his treatment. I'm a Christian, I'm a preacher, I'm there to talk about his soul. And he said, you know what? I'm not feeling well right now, but I want you to come back later tonight. There are some things I want to talk to you about. And I have no idea about his religious past. I always thought that he was a member of the church. He married a girl who was a member of the church. But he said, I want to be baptized the right way for the right reason. Here, guy's dying of cancer. We go out to his house on a Sunday night. Me and one of our elders, his two sons are there. They literally have to lift this guy out of bed. They're carrying him into the bathroom to baptize him. His sons on each side, they start going to the shower. I said, wrong group, guys. We don't sprinkle. Keep it coming. You know? And they bring him over. They fill the tub. He's laying in this bathtub. He can't even walk. And I asked him, to make the good confession. And with the help of his sons and an elder, we immerse him. And he ended his life with an exclamation point. Not a question mark. Well, I don't know. He said, I want to know that I'm right with the Lord before I face him. This is not an evangelistic meeting, but I'm not going to fail in this opportunity to tell you that's the most important choice, the most pressing decision any person will ever make. And regardless of all the good choices you make throughout the course of your lifetime, if you don't decide to come to Christ, submit to him, put him on in baptism, and live with him until you die, you made a tragic mistake. And so, as we conclude today, I just don't go home this morning. I just want to end with that story, because to me, regardless of other decisions we think about in our seminar today, that to me, coming to Christ in primary obedience, living faithfully for him until you die. That's what it's all about. And so I'm grateful to be here. We have a 15-minute break?
10:30.
Okay, and so we'll start back up at 10:30. Thank you. These folks, nice to meet you. Glad to be here. Looking forward to the day.
It's great to
You were here.
I don't think it's there yet. You can see it.
Well, that's okay. That's okay.
Take your advice.
Yeah. Do something like this when they ask you about this, right? And I've known that other three for a long time. That's why I helped out for basic. You've been in that program.